And this night was the night I thought my dad would come home and start fighting, because every time he was coming home, I would know when there's going to be war. I would be shaking and trembling and all that. And so this night was kind of the same. Because I remember going to my mom's room to ask her, is dad coming home? The reason I was asking is because she had come from Nairobi. So I thought I was following. And she said, I do not know. What is it? I said, I don't know either. It was the first time I sent her, so I asked her to give me drinking water. And she gave me water and I prayed. And when I went to bed, I couldn't sleep. We were sleeping in the kitchen, which was grass thatched, so it had open spaces. You could be counting the stars in the open heaven. It was an open heaven. So remember, I am looking out, and I am shaking, and I heard a voice call my name. Mukali, preach my word. Mukali, preach my word. I thought he was telling me to preach the word in Sunday school, because church elders had asked me to be a Sunday school teacher, which I didn't mind. But the more I understood that the Lord was calling me to be a pastor, the more I ran away from it. Who wants to be a pastor anyway? It's not easy. So if you're not called, don't go. If you're called, don't stay back.
So this is you getting your pastoral call. Now, how did that move to become also what you're doing in terms of you're now called and you also have purpose?
This calling, for me, of course, the more I understood it, the more I ran away from it. But when I started accepting it, gave me the reason for my being. Because I realized I'm not living for myself. I'm living for my Father in heaven. And I've always wanted to hold and cherish my relationship with God. Because if it were not for Him, where would I be living? And so years passed, I completed primary school, I go to high school, and because I lacked school fees constantly, I remember when I was in Form 4, I told the Lord, if you provide for my school fees, I will obey that calling that you've been calling me. Sort of like a training. So give me school fees, I use my education to serve you. But after high school, I didn't want. Like every or almost every village person, you complete high school, you come to the city. I've worked in town as a hawker, selling straws and serviettes and stuff. I was living in Lunga slums at this particular time. And life was not easy. I wanted to join Daystar University. I was bargaining with the Lord, just make me a minister in the marketplace. If I become a pastor, I will die in poverty. And I've grown up in poverty. So why don't you just give me something different? But He pursued me. And so 3 times I almost died. And the last 2 times, one, I was knocked on by the side mirror of a counter, laid on the roadside. And I remember the voice of the Lord asking me, for how long will you harden your heart? And I didn't respond because I wasn't ready. And the second time, I was almost crushed by a train. I was now working as a house girl in Dorah, for those who come from Nairobi. And I was going back to the slums of Lunga to get money from a lady I had left my bed to, as I went to work as a house girl. And I didn't hear the hooting of the train. I didn't hear the shaking of the rails. I just heard the voice of a man on the other side. He made some funny noise like and pointed to the train. I was one step away from the train. So I jumped on the side. And I remember the voice of the Lord asking me, so what do you say now? And I say, yes, Lord. So it's after this I went back to the church and spoke to my pastor, who organized my joining school. So I went for theological training again by faith. I remember telling the registrar, believe God with you. If in the first year God has provided, we will know He never called me. But if He provides, we will not be called weak. So He allowed me. I went through school 4 years, came to Summit Church, AIC Jericho. Someone said hi to me because they saw my photo on the screen. She was among I was their youth pastor at the time. And it's during this time that the calling to rescue girls who've been sexually abused came. Different girls came to my office. It was an iron sheet office. And every time they walked out of the office, I would be left screaming silently because I didn't want my colleagues to hear that I am crying. And the reason I was screaming silently was because they were also reminding me of my own experience of rape. And I was asking God, so it was not only me. So it is happening. And who cares? And my who cares was targeted towards the church. Having grown up in church, the least I had heard about gender-based violence was a pastor saying that it is okay to hit your wife. I had gone through a theological college 4 years. I wouldn't have missed anything sexual abuse or gender-based violence because I'd grown in it and I had experienced rape just before I went for my theological training. So if the church is not talking about it, then who cares? Who cares that we have these girls coming to my office and sharing how they are being constantly abused by their employers or boyfriends to their employers or something like that? Who cares that we have women seated in the pews of the church who are constantly being abused by husbands? This came from a group of women that met every Thursday, and they always called me for prayer. But their stories were hard. I didn't want to hear them constantly. So this created what I usually call a holy discontent within me. Who cares if the church is not talking about rape and sexual abuse and gender-based violence? So this is where the desire, the oomph started being created from. But of course I needed to heal first. I joined AIU for my master's and went to heal. I remember I saw a room.
how is the rent going to be paid?
Like someone in the dance group yesterday said, don't try this at home. If God has not told you to, don't. It wasn't easy. But remember my agreement with God? I hope it was. To accommodate them in a very, very small space. So my t-shirt would be done like this. This dress is a waste of material. It should dress 2 to 3 girls. It is my bed sheets, my jeans, my pair of jeans, made school bags for them. So the upper part would give me like 4 school bags and the lower part would give me 1 school bag. So a pair of jeans of mine with 5 school bags for the girls. We took them to school. We couldn't afford exercise books after some time. So we would get from a shop, God bless this guy, a 32-page exercise book and black out pages. So you will write on this today, and you today. A pencil would serve 4 kids. So we buy 1 pencil and cut it into 4 pieces. So it wasn't easy. And of course now we've rented a space. I'm homeless. People I thought we were friends who are not happy with me going public about sharing about me being raped. I remember one church elder who called me after a TV interview and asked me, why did you go public? So even in places where I'd be invited to speak, they stopped inviting me because I was talking about a shame subject. I remember another church elder who told me, if you are helping orphans, I would support you. But you're helping those that are defiant. I remember trying to tell him, but these ones are more vulnerable. And I also have orphans in the team. And he said, no, if they were not defiant, because this is dirty, I would have supported you. So it's been a journey of holding on to the calling that God called me to. And I'm still here. Don't cry.
As the right person to handle this. So emotional. Let me just, has the conversation changed since you began? Secondly, maybe how young are we talking? And what's the youngest or you've ever rescued in terms of this developments that the abuse?
The conversation has not fully changed. It's getting there, but it's not fully changed. Again, I remember another church, and this I learned last year actually, I didn't know. And this guy tells me, Flora, let me tell you something I never told you. One of the reasons that you were sent from our church with your children was because you looked like the one who is supposed to be rescued and not a rescuer. And of course, after spending my rent money, you have no money for rent, you have money for hair. So I maintained Ghanaian lines. I would do Ghanaian lines constantly. And I would do henna. You know henna survives how many months? So my nails would not be like flat. I would be walking, if you tell me you have clothes, someone would come and I would be walking with big bags. I remember one time I went to Kamukunji to buy innerwears because these girls come to the center and most of them wear an innerwear for the very first time. So this lady asked me, why are you buying so many innerwears and they're small, they're not your size? And I said I am doing a rescue center and all this. And she told me, well, God will give you yours. For now, just have this done to the kids. So I wasn't looking as people would expect a person rescuing should look like. But of course I am in need of rescue. That's why Jesus died for me, right? That I needed rescue.
They also ignore Jesus. because it didn't look like a savior.
No, yeah, oh sure. I didn't look like a donkey that would be carrying the savior, right? According to some people's sight. The youngest we've ever rescued was being defiled by the father. She was 2.5. You remember in Kenya, the youngest victim defiled by 6 months. And so we rescued this girl when she was about 2.5. Courtesy of the father, we still have her at the center. The next youngest, that gives me goosebumps. She was 4.5. And again, she was first defiled by the father when she was 6 months old. The biggest, this guy would rape the sister, and now he turned to the smaller sister. And when he started, my stories are always hard stories, pardon me, but they're true. The father lay on his back. He was erected, and he forced the sister to push down the smaller sister. And that was the beginning of him defending the sister. And when we rescued the sister, because the sister would be defiled by the father, and the mom would also traffic her. At the age of 12, she looked at me and told me, "Mom, I don't know how many men I have slept with." Because the mom would be beaten. Yeah, today was the youngest. We have young girls today. But yeah.
What? Jesus Christ. Maybe how do you, first of all, is the conversation changing? And maybe with the women here, we probably walk around, we have neighbors, probably their children have been abused, we don't know about it. Maybe children go to school and these are their friends. Are there tell signs? Are there things we should know and ignore so that we can know maybe who we should call the officers or the police for?
Yeah, some of the kids we've rescued, the cases were reported by teachers. Because the teacher noted a different working style for this child, or extreme withdrawal from her social ways, or a child all of a sudden becoming sexualized, like she wants to touch and, do stuff. But that's a telltale sign. Sometimes the child will just talk. The challenge we still have is that being a shame-oriented community or society, we still go quiet on so many things. At the point of you can't, usitoe boma nje. I'm thinking in my own language, don't take the family story right. And in some communities they say you don't hit the snake taking it out, you hit the snake bringing it back to the house, especially if it's the husband doing it and you do not want to talk about it. But it's important to notice that God is interested in these lives. And it's important to notice that if we keep quiet, the life of this child is forever changed. For God, intervention and care doesn't come in. So it's good we talk about it. I wish we would normalize the conversation and say, no, it's wrong. Yeah.
So now, looking at you, you look like a rescuer. So how is it now running? You said, and maybe what are the now challenges? Are you able to meet the cost? And maybe where are you also located?
We're based in Kamundo sub-county, Machakos County. We usually say Tala for ease of identification. The Lord has helped us. We began by faith, and faith sustains us. I usually say I'm a missionary in my own land, because these kids come, they never know God, so we introduce them to God. prayer. And one of the things that I love is I know there are those that are serious with God. And every day we meet for prayer. We had over half night cash out last night, and they did. I watched some of them that we rescued from the streets where they slept, covering themselves to the soil, and they're now at the pulpit. So I usually say from the streets to the pulpit, they're leading us in worship. From sun harvesting to the pulpit, they're leading us in worship. God is growing them. We have 3 in college this year. The new center has been able to take care of 150 kids. Currently, I'm a mother to 76 kids. They all call me mama. I remember the first time Maria called me, I was like, I'm not your mother. But again, I couldn't say that. And I went back to God, like, God, are you serious right now? That you never allowed me to be called a mom from my own kids, but other kids are starting to call me mom. It's been a journey of my walk with God. The Lord has humbled me constantly. That I said, with no clothes, with no underwear. And today, courtesy of you donating your clothes, and another one donating their clothes, and another one food. It looks so beautiful. If you come on a Sunday morning, you would think this is not a rescue center. Like I may have a leader who started our home and this is that. We have had approximately 22 who've gone through high school, and like I said, now we have 3 in college, some have left, everyone of 26 in school. The challenge is keeping them alive every day. Like now schools are closed, there are those we can't take back home at all, because the abuser is still at large. But the abuser was the father, the abuser was the mom, because it's the mom who will be sending them. So feeding them every day is an everyday task. We take them to school, so there's school fees for them. Those that are in boarding school, so we're wiping that out because of affordability. Next year we'll have 4 in Form 4, but the rest are in school that we are running, so they're helping us. And the challenges of now, I must admit, the challenge of teenagehood, adolescence, the challenge of those that were being abused when they were younger, as they are growing up and they are understanding what was happening to them, is also something, because you watch them start growing and stuff like that. But every day with the Lord,
Something I've noted about your story is you somehow seem to understand the quality of God's voice. And probably someone in our midst who is, maybe God is calling you to different places to create impact. Maybe how would you explain that sense of obeying God's voice? And maybe someone would be asking, how does he speak? Maybe you had the privilege of being in a grass house. So you had him clearly, but how does God really
When you walk with someone for some time, you know their voice. And it also takes a point of surrender to God. The challenge we have is many times we want to listen to different voices. The times you will need to cut off the other voices and be sure it's God. And because if you have walked with Him, you will know when He speaks. You will know when it is a command. You will know when it is a suggestion. and I didn't want to lose that with him. Spending time in God's Word. He can speak audibly. He can speak through dreams and visions, and our theologians in the house are like, God stopped speaking. That's a discussion for the theologians. And he can use another person, but be sure that when he uses another person, you do not ride on the hearing of other people. You can confirm it with God yourself. Because many people are getting lost because God said so and so, did he confirm it with you? So I would say it takes a closer walk with God, a conscious listening, and a conscious desire to obey. It will also depend on what you value in your life. Do you value being seen by others, or are you concerned about God seeing you first before others can? Whose praise are you seeking for first? Is it the praise of the Father in heaven, or the praise of men? Yeah.
Like for maybe you say a prayer before we completely finish. I know maybe there are women, if we could even say the written announcement, maybe the people who are battling from us, probably people who are defiled in the dark age, like Aqua, so it should stay there. So maybe say a prayer as the Spirit of God leads you, then you're good to be done with the session.
Let's pray.